Я всю жизнь брожу по просторам и готов еще жизнь так кружить. И кого не спроси, все несутся в такси, и никто не научит, как жить. Но в центре просторов есть место, где светло, и туда все глядят. И там на совесть и честь всех научат, как есть, детей, стариков и ребят. Вечерний мудозвон, вечерний мудозвон, подлинный труженик наших времен. Вечерний, вечерний мудозвон, вечерний мудозвон, честнее, правдивее и лучше всех он. Вечерний мудозвон. Он все, что закажут, расскажет и ответит на каждый вопрос. У народа душа, а за ней ни гроша, но зато мы утерли всем нос. Он сияет, как новый полтинник, с него капли лосьоны и лак. И когда гопота распинает Христа, он объяснит, отчего Христос враг. Вечерний мудозвон, вечерний мудозвон, когда нужна правда, правдивее всех он. Вечерний, вечерний мудозвон, вечерний мудозвон, вот истинный памятник наших времен. Вечерний мудозвон, вечерний мудозвон. Я не знаю, зачем и кому это нужно, кто послал их на смерть не дрожащей рукой. Только так бесполезно, так зло и не нужно. Опускали их в вечный покой. Равнодушные зрители молча кутались в шубы, и какая-то женщина с искаженным лицом целовала покойника в посиневшие губы и швырнула в священника обручальным кольцом. Забросали их елками, закидали их грязью и пошли по домам под шумок толковать, что пора положить уже конец безобразию, что и так уже скоро мы все начнем голодать. И никто не додумался просто встать на колени и сказать этим мальчикам, что в бездарной стране даже светлые подвиги — это только ступени в бесконечные пропасти к недоступной весне. Я не знаю, зачем и кому это нужно, кто послал их на смерть не дрожащей рукой. Только так бесполезно, так зло и не нужно. Опустили их в вечный покой.
Rivido per tutta l'arena da Baixada dalla parte opposta dell'Atletico Paranaense. Attacca adesso con Vitor Roque che sposta palla, ultimi 30 secondi. Vitor Roque ancora Perde palla ma subisce fallo. Calcio di punizione, ultima opportunità della partita per l'Atletico Paranense, ma rivediamo qui il sinistro di Praxedes, esterno della rete. Sarebbe stato il blitz perfetto del Vasco da Gama. Zapelli per l'ultimo cross, l'ultima preghiera, l'ultima palla della partita. Tutti dentro. Zapelli e 6, o meglio 7, maglia rossonera dentro. Cross in aria, palla corta, messa fuori. Finisce qui. Atletico Paranaense e Vasco da Gama impattano sullo 0-0. A tutti voi grazie per la cortese attenzione e restate come sempre su Sport Italia.
Caused widespread flooding. More than 2,000 towns and villages in Ukraine have been left in the dark as wind speeds reached more than 140 miles per hour. From Kyiv, James Waterhouse sent this report.
Nature doesn't discriminate. In war or peacetime, it knocks when it wants. In occupied Crimea, Russian emergency crews rescue people on Ukrainian soil after a river burst its banks. Southern Ukraine felt the brunt of this storm. It meant in the Odessa region, no one was going anywhere without help. Instead of Russian bombs, people here faced a different enemy, punishing winds which damaged homes and left many without power in the biting cold.
It is undoubtedly a catastrophe on a huge scale, not only for the city, it's a statewide disaster.
Amid the misery, hope. Baby Victoria was born at her mother's home. The hospital was out of reach, so they took refuge at a fire station. For the southern Russian city of Sochi, the storm meant this. The Black Sea pounded hundreds of miles of coastline. The weather for Ukraine's capital is more bittersweet. High winds mean drone attacks are less likely. Relative calm after a weekend where Russia launched 75 of them at Kyiv.
It's just our weather. What's more important is keeping the boys warm in the trenches. We will survive it here.
I start crying when I think about soldiers. It's hard to imagine what it feels like there. It's painful to think about it.
For all of the struggles caused by this storm, they're most acutely being felt by the soldiers fighting in the endless trenches and tree lines. It's been a devastation for the region which for once hasn't been caused by Russia's invasion. James Waterhouse, BBC News, Kyiv.
The Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis has said he's deeply disappointed by what he called the abrupt cancellation of his meeting with his UK counterpart Rishi Sunak, scheduled for this afternoon in Downing Street. The decision came after Mr Mitsotakis told the BBC that he would use the meeting to call for the return of the Parthenon sculptures, or Elgin marbles, from the British Museum to Athens. The Greek Prime Minister also said those who firmly believed in the correctness of their positions were never hesitant to engage in constructive debate. The sculptures, which are currently in the British Museum, were removed from the Parthenon in the 19th century. Well, let's go live now to Professor Irene Stamatoudi, who's a former member of the Advisory Committee for the Greek Minister of Culture. Professor, why was this brought up by the Prime Minister, given that both parties, both nations, have a long-standing position on the sculptures?
That's indeed true. One would not expect that the issue of the Parthenon marbles would create a diplomatic incident. Greece's stance on the matter is crystal clear and has remained unchanged through the years. The Greek Prime Minister said nothing new or different in this respect. Lord Elgin misused his office at the beginning of 1800 to dismantle the Parthenon temple, pitch huge damage on it by sawing off the facades from the metops and the frieze of the temple and took its pieces to Britain not to save them, but to decorate his country house in Scotland. He then went bankrupt, of course, and sold them to the British state. But the British state bought them without checking any substantial documentation concerning...
But Professor, sorry, just to keep specifically to this latest development, the Prime Minister, Downing Street, has said that it had assurances that the Greek Prime Minister would not raise this subject.
I don't believe that there was such an agreement. It would also not be an honorable thing for one country's prime minister to ask another country's prime minister to set aside a just and fair request made on behalf of his people. This matter is pending for several years on the UNESCO agenda, and in fact, it is there since 1983. It's the only matter on the UNESCO agenda regarding repatriation that has not been solved. So I wouldn't believe that such an agreement was at place.
Do you think there was
demanding resistance in the style of Hamas?
And rightly so, because of his passivity.
Really?
Because of the passivity, because of the passivity of the Palestinian Authority, which should have played a different kind of role, unifying all Palestinians and insisting on our right of a democratic system.
Сказав моїй дружині, треба збиратись, треба піднімати дітей. Почалась війна.
When big names talk, they talk to the BBC.
Hello.